I finally decided to check out something from the days of the Xbox 360 and PS3 era of gaming, and to my complete shock, Mass Effect 3's multiplayer is still alive and kicking after more than a decade. That's right. Players are still actively engaging in the co-op horde mode, grinding for unlockables and fending off waves of Cerberus troops, Geth and Reapers like it's still 2012. But here's the real kicker, even Mass Effect Andromeda has around 800 active players. Now this raises a massive question. If Mass Effect 3's multiplayer still has an engaged community all these years later, why wasn't it remastered and brought to modern consoles? Welcome to the Snake Pit, where we're full of bile and venom. I'm your host, Snake Daemon, and today we're diving into something I never expected. A relic of the Xbox 360 and PS3 era that refuses to die. Admittedly, you can still play it on PC through EA's servers, but that's a limited option when you consider the potential this game mode has. Mass Effect 3's multiplayer, also known as Galaxy at War, was one of the biggest surprises of the game. An addictive, well-balanced co-op mode where up to 4 players completed objectives and survived increasingly difficult waves of enemies. Unlockables, new character types and weapons were earned via in-game currency, or of course microtransactions, because EA. But despite the presence of those dreaded microtransactions, Galaxy at War was never really pay to win. The game kept things fair by making unlocks random, ensuring that no one could outright buy an overpowered loadout. More importantly, it was fun, tense, strategic, and a great way to experience the Mass Effect universe outside of Shepard's story. So let's get to the real question. Why, in the name of all that is, Krogan headbutts did EA leave this game mode in the past? They had a perfect opportunity to bring it back with the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, but instead, they opted to cut it entirely, claiming it would be too much effort to update. Meanwhile, Mass Effect 3's original servers are still up and running, kept alive by die-hard fans who refuse to let it go. And yet EA, one of the biggest publishers pushing live service games, completely ignored the chance to bring it back in a meaningful way. Now I know what you're thinking. Microtransactions are the bane of modern gaming, and yes, EA would probably shove a battle pass and overpriced loot packs into any revival. But here's the thing, a remastered version of Galaxy at War could work brilliantly as a standalone game. Look at how other multiplayer-centric titles have handled it. Games like Evil Dead, the game, and the Killer Clowns from Outer Space have proven that there's an audience for well-made cooperative online experiences. Imagine Mass Effect 3's multiplayer rebuilt as a free-to-play title, or even a separate purchase with an optional online pass. And why stop at just a remaster? This could be expanded into something even bigger. Super as how to make Mass Effect multiplayer a standalone hit. Bring in characters from all Mass Effect games. The original Galaxy at War let players control different races, but imagine expanding that even further. Let us play as a Drell Assassin, a Vorcha Berserker, or even a Yarg, if we're feeling truly overpowered. And yes, bring in characters from Andromeda. Say what you will about the game, but it had some interesting races and powers that could fit into a multiplayer environment. Introducing new enemy factions and game modes, the Reapers, Geth and Cerberus were great enemies in ME3's multiplayer, but what about adding new enemy types? Let players fight against Eclipse, Bloodpack or even the Collectors in new mission types. Better yet, introduce a PvP mode where players can take control of the enemy side. Playing as a Banshee, a Krogan Warlord or a Cerberus Phantom could add some serious variety. Environmental destruction and new mission objectives. One of Mass Effect's greatest strengths is its level design, but multiplayer maps were static. What if we change that? Imagine a brute smashing through a wall to grab hiding civilians, or a Ravager unleashing acid to dissolve cover. Let players affect the battlefield. Krogans could charge through barriers, engineers could set up barricades, and biotics could tear apart structures. This wouldn't just be a refresh, it would turn Galaxy at War into a full-fledged Mass Effect warzone. Wipeout missions where you play as the villains. One of the best additions to a potential revival could be invasion-style missions where players take on the role of Reapers, Cerberus or the Geth. Each faction could have its own objectives: Reapers abducting civilians, Cerberus taking over key locations, or Geth attempting to convert enemy forces. These could add fresh, engaging gameplay that breaks the cycle of just defending against waves of enemies. A story-driven co-op mode, the next evolution of Galaxy at War. One of the biggest missed opportunities in Mass Effect 3's multiplayer was the lack of a narrative-driven experience. Sure, there were mission objectives and lore tidbits, but imagine if the game incorporated a full co-op campaign similar to what Back 4 Blood attempted, except, actually good. Picture this. Instead of just surviving waves of enemies, you and your squad of alien badasses are sent on high-stakes missions across the galaxy. Each mission isn't just a one-off fight, but part of a larger interconnected campaign with consequences. Escort missions done right. Instead of just defending a console, because apparently every sci-fi universe still has really slow uploads, imagine having to escort a vital scientist or defecting enemy commander through a war zone. Maybe you're fighting through a ruined colony while Cerberus mechs rain fire down on you, forcing your team to coordinate movement and cover. Branching objectives. Players could be given choices mid-mission. Do you save the civilian refugees or destroy an enemy stronghold? These choices could affect future missions, changing the enemy forces you face or unlocking different rewards. Unique boss fights. A PvE co-op mode would allow for massive cinematic battles against Mass Effect's most terrifying creatures. Imagine fighting a Reaper husk monstrosity, dodging a Banshee strike team, or even taking down a rogue Krogan warlord leading a Bloodpack army. And here's the best part: character classes, abilities, and team synergy would actually matter. A Drell assassin could stealth ahead to disable alarms. An Asari biotic could create cover with stasis fields, and a Solarian engineer could hack enemy turrets to turn the tide. This would turn Mass Effect's multiplayer into something more than just a wave-based survival mode. It would feel like a true squad-based campaign, letting players live out the experience of a battle-hardened strike team in the Mass Effect universe. It's baffling. Mass Effect is still a beloved franchise, with Mass Effect 4 in development and a dedicated fan base ready for more. The live service model is what EA thrives on. So why ignore Galaxy at War, one of their most well-received multiplayer modes? Halo brought back its multiplayer for free. Call of Duty turned Warzone into a separate game. And even The Last of Us was supposed to get its own multiplayer spin-off, until Sony forgot how to run a studio. Meanwhile, Mass Effect 3's multiplayer sits there, running on decade-old servers, proving that players still want this experience, even if EA refuses to acknowledge it. So here's the pitch: EA, BioWare, whoever is still awake over there, stop wasting time and bring this back. Remaster it, rebuild it, rework it, and actually give Mass Effect's multiplayer the second life it deserves. The fans are still here, the demand is still here. The only thing missing is someone with the brains to make it happen. Thanks for dropping by the Snake Pit, where we thrive on untapped potential and lost opportunities. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell, like the video, and leave your opinions in the comments, where, naturally, I won't read them. Until next time, stay venomous.